I still remember the exact moment Bryce Thompson fired me. It was a late Wednesday morning in October 2016, the kind where the Seattle rain tapped rhythmically on the office windows, and I was deep in vendor performance reports, my desk a sea of color-coded tabs and procurement data. Then came the slam. No knock, no courtesy, just Bryce, barging in with his usual bravado, his tailored suit still damp from the drizzle outside, his expression tight with something that looked like anger, but felt more like performance. "Callie?" he barked, flinging a thick folder across my desk. It hit the edge of my keyboard and bounced, papers spilling out like an accusation. "We need to talk." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice even. I'd learned long ago that composure was my best armor. "Of course," I said, motioning to the guest chair across from me. He didn't sit. He stayed standing, looming, trying to assert dominance the way he always did, through silence, presence, pressure. "The board's agreed it's time to restructure leadership," he said, his voice clipped, rehearsed. "We're moving in a direction that requires more dynamic oversight. We need people who lead, not just process spreadsheets." I stared at him, unsure if I'd heard him right. "You're letting me go?" I asked, my voice low, controlled. Not weak, just stunned. He smiled, just slightly, a patronizing, satisfied little curl of the lip. "Let's not make this emotional," he said. "Your work's fine, Callie. But leadership, that takes vision, authority, charisma, things you've struggled to demonstrate. No performance review, no acknowledgement that my department had saved the company over $4 million 0 cents that quarter alone. Just him, delivering his verdict like I'd already been erased from the future." That moment is seared into my memory, the flicker of the fluorescent lights, the faint scent of pine from the air freshener Bryce insisted on, the silence that followed his words. I could have broken then, but I didn't. I looked him in the eye and said, steady as ever, "I see. May I ask what specifically led to this decision?" He didn't hesitate. "You lack leadership presence. You're efficient, but not inspiring." It wasn't about performance. It never was. It was about control, image, and the fact that I didn't fit the mold. I was a 38-year-old woman who didn't play power games, and to him, that made me expendable. But he didn't know what I really owned. "Not yet." "I understand," I said calmly. Bryce squinted, visibly thrown. I think he expected a scene. Tears, a protest, something messy he could use to justify what he'd just done. But I'd spent most of my career learning how to stay composed in rooms dominated by ego. "I'll need your badge and company laptop by end of day," he said, already halfway to the door. "Your access will be revoked at 5 p.m. HR will handle your severance." I stood, extended my hand. "Thank you, Bryce. I appreciate the clarity." He paused, shook it. "Good luck out there," he muttered, with that smugness of a man who thought he'd won. As the door shut behind him, I sat back down slowly. My eyes landed on the framed photo on my desk. My dad, grinning as he cut the ribbon on Cascadia Logic's first downtown office, the same company Bryce had just released me from. But my hands didn't tremble. My breath stayed steady. If anything, I felt lighter. Because Bryce didn't know the truth. No one in that building did. 2 weeks ago, something fundamental changed, and I'd been waiting patiently, silently, for the right moment to act. I ran my finger along the frame and whispered, "You told me to wait, Dad, until the timing was right." And now, it was. Let me take you back a little so you'll understand why this moment mattered and how it triggered everything that followed. My father, Daniel Prescott, founded Cascadia Logic in the early 2000s. It started as a scrappy AI consultancy run out of a leaky co-working loft in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. Just him and 3 engineers, with big ideas and old laptops. But my dad believed in more than technology. He believed in people. He used to say, "Companies aren't code and cash flow. They're humans trying to build something that matters." I grew up in that world, Saturdays spent curled up with comic books under the whiteboard while he sketched ideas. He'd take me into meetings, let me push the slide clicker, beam at me like I belonged there. "This," he'd say, pointing at the server room, "is where it all starts. Ideas, grit, and trust." When he died, in 2011, just like that, a stroke during a morning jog, I was 25, fresh out of grad school, devastated. Cascadia lost its center, and I dove in. Started at the bottom, like he'd made me promise. "You earn your place, Callie," he'd said. "No shortcuts, no every inch of this company." So I did. Customer ops, procurement, product. I learned everything. I loved it. The chaos, the pace, the quiet wins only insiders ever see. And all along, I waited. And if you're still with me, don't miss what comes next, because the real story is just beginning. Subscribe and stick around as I show you exactly how I turned the tables. But then, Bryce Thompson arrived. He showed up just under a year after my dad passed. Polished, articulate, and packaged like he'd been focus grouped. Stanford MBA. Cufflinks that probably cost more than my rent, and a handshake that lingered just long enough to feel strategic. The board was dazzled. They saw him as a visionary, someone who would modernize Cascadia logic and sharpen our competitive edge. But I saw something different. He wasn't about vision, he was about power. He started quietly cutting departments he didn't understand, laying off senior engineers who'd helped build our original infrastructure. They were replaced by flashier hires with zero connection to our roots. Culture began to shift. What once felt like a family morphed into a cold, political machine. Meetings became performances, his performances. He steamrolled conversations, hijacked ideas, dismissed anyone who didn't flatter him. And me? I was just another speed bump on his way to center stage. Still, I stayed. I thought I could protect what was left of my father's legacy. I led my team with the care my dad taught me, never shouting, never posturing, just showing up, working hard, and lifting others. I pitched bold strategies, like the time I proposed a hybrid AI integration model that would have slashed costs by 40%. Bryce dismissed it outright, called it too premature. A week later, he pitched the exact same plan to the board, word for word, as if it were his. That wasn't a one-off. He sidelined anyone who didn't play court politics, especially women, introverts, and the ones who quietly got things done without demanding credit. He'd saunter through the open floor plan with smug commentary, watching people scramble, feeding off the chaos. And I scrambled, not for him, but for the company I still loved. We built something incredible. A new automation platform developed from scratch. We bled into that project. Sleepless nights, late pizza runs, endless revisions. But when it launched, it soared. Sales spiked. Tech blogs praised it. At the launch party, Bryce stood on stage, glass in hand, credit pouring from his lips. About himself. Not a word about the developers, the marketers, the analysts who had made it real. I stood in the back, arms crossed. My team deserved that spotlight. But I didn't march up there. I just smiled faintly, because I still had something he didn't. Purpose and allies. Quiet ones, but loyal. Morgan from accounting used to slip me coffee with a wink when I looked worn down. "You're the real deal, Callie," she'd say, her voice low but full of belief. And Tom from DevOps? He'd always nod in quiet agreement when I pitched ideas, especially the ones Bryce bulldozed. They saw me, even if he didn't. And that mattered more than they knew. One night, I was working late again. The office was hushed, the only light in my corner coming from my desk lamp, casting long shadows across the stacks of prototypes and half-drunk coffee cups. Bryce passed by my open door, stopping briefly. "Still here?" He smirked, arms folded. "Burning the midnight oil, huh? Dedication's sweet, but it doesn't win wars." I looked up at him, bleary but grounded. "Maybe not," I said. "But it builds what outlasts them." He chuckled, dismissive, like I'd said something from a fortune cookie. He walked away, certain of his place. And I sat there, staring at the empty doorway, heart pounding, not with fear, but resolve. He thought I was a background player. He had no idea what was coming. Everything changed the morning I turned 30. Sunlight poured into my Capitol Hill apartment, hitting the hardwood just right. I didn't usually mark birthdays. Too much to do, too many fires to put out. But this day felt different. Around 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Mr. Langston, our family's longtime lawyer. His voice was calm, but unusually formal. "Allie, your father left something for you. He said you weren't to see it until today." Curious and slightly nervous, I drove over. His office smelled like cedar and old contracts, steady like always. He handed me a sealed envelope marked with my dad's wax insignia. My heart stuttered. I broke the seal slowly. Inside, a letter in my father's neat, deliberate handwriting. And behind it, a legal document. "Callie," it began, "if you're reading this, you've turned 30. That means you're ready. Never doubted you. Not for a second. I've watched you work twice as hard, get half the credit, and lead with the kind of strength most people overlook. The company's changed since I left. I suspected there might come a time you'd need more than your desk to make things right. So I gave you something stronger. I gave you the company." My fingers trembled as I unfolded the second page. A trust agreement. Clear, binding, and shockingly real. 90% of Cascadia Logic held in my name, released on my 30th birthday. I stared at it, lips parted. "Is this real?" I whispered. Mr. Langston nodded gently. "It's ironclad. Your father wanted you protected and empowered. The board doesn't know unless you tell them." I sat there, stunned. Adrenaline surged through me like an electric current. "Why not sooner?" I asked. Mr. Langston smiled faintly. "Your father wanted you to see the company first, to learn who people really are before you held the power to change anything." It hit like a punch to the chest. All those meetings where I was interrupted, all the credit quietly stolen, all the glances that dismissed me before I spoke. Dad had seen it coming. He knew I'd need more than just a title. I'd need leverage. And now I had it. But I didn't rush in, waving papers and making speeches. That wasn't my way. I scheduled another meeting with Mr. Langston, walking through every legal angle. "We can call a shareholder meeting," he said, his tone crisp. "With your shares, the agenda is yours." I nodded. "Not yet. I'll tell you when. Let Bryce feel untouchable. Let him strut around one more time." 2 weeks later, he fired me, and unknowingly handed me the perfect opening. That afternoon, I sent the text, "It's time, prepare everything." Langston replied in seconds. "Understood. Meeting scheduled. 5 business days." The day I left, I packed quietly. A ceramic mug my team gave me after our first successful rollout, 3 notebooks packed with ideas Bryce never even glanced at, and a photo of Dad, forever, smiling at that ribbon-cutting ceremony. The office buzzed behind me. Side glances, whispered guesses. No one asked what happened, but I felt it. Did she fail? Did she step out of line? I stepped into the daylight outside the Cascadia Logic building and smiled. They thought this was the end. They were wrong. The next few days, I went underground. Met Langston again at a quiet cafe in Belltown, his legal folder waiting. He slid over the documents. "You're sure?" he asked. "This will be a boardroom grenade." I met his eyes. They pulled the pin when they fired me. I also sat down with Caroline Yates, the trustee who'd quietly managed my father's shares all these years. She passed me a folder. "Ownership documents. And a full performance report," she said. "Bryce has hollowed this place out, morale's down, turnover's brutal, flat growth in a soaring industry." I nodded. Let the numbers speak for me. By Monday, the rumors had reached a fever pitch. My phone buzzed with texts. "Did you quit? Bryce says everything's fine, but HR is acting weird. Are you okay?" I didn't reply. Silence was my weapon, and I was done playing small. That night, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror. slipping into a navy suit I'd bought years ago but never found the occasion or maybe the confidence to wear. It was clean, sharp, tailored for command. The kind of suit you wear when you're done asking permission. I didn't rehearse a speech, just a few lines. The truth didn't need rehearsing. Tuesday morning, I walked through the glass doors of Cascadia Logic. The receptionist blinked twice, but said nothing as I passed. Mr. Langston met me by the elevators. "They're in there," he said quietly. "Bryce thinks it's a strategy session." I nodded, smoothed my lapel, and stepped into the hallway. The boardroom door clicked open. Heads turned. Bryce was mid-pitch, hands sweeping in one of his rehearsed gestures. He froze when he saw me. "Callie," he barked, "this is a closed session, board only." I placed my documents on the table and smiled. Then I took the head seat. Silence rolled over the room like thunder. Bryce's brow furrowed, eyes narrowing. "This is a board meeting. Employees don't—" "I'm not here as an employee," I said, cool and steady. "I'm here as the majority shareholder." Chairs shifted. Mr. Hollis, one of my father's oldest colleagues, adjusted his glasses. Studying the documents, I slid his way. "Is this legitimate?" he asked. "Yes," I said. 90% of shares, transferred via trust on my 30th birthday. All legal, fully notarized. Bryce's face turned a deeper red. "You can't be serious." "Am." And so was my father. He knew this day might come. I opened the second folder. "As majority shareholder, I've called this meeting to review executive leadership, starting with the CEO." Bryce shot up. "This is a coup, a personal vendetta?" I didn't flinch. "I'm not asking, I'm acting." Then I pushed the report across the table. Employee morale, down 38%. Turnover, up 47%. 3 open discrimination complaints. Flat revenue in a booming sector. Misused funds. Inflated bonuses, misleading board updates. "Everything," I said, locking eyes with him, "under your watch." He sputtered. "You're twisting this." "I don't need to twist," I said, voice calm. "I have receipts. You assumed no one would stand up to you." I leaned forward. "The things today." I pulled the final document from my folder. Effective immediately, I'm moving to remove Bryce Thompson as CEO of Cascadia Logic. My 90% vote carries it. The secretary stared. "You don't need a second?" "Not with a majority," I said. Mr. Hollis nodded. "Motion stands." Bryce slammed the table, red with rage, but he didn't argue. He knew. He stormed out, and for the first time, he didn't look powerful, just small. I turned to the board. "This company deserves better. So do its people." Mr. Hollis gave a faint smile. "Welcome back, Callie." But I didn't stop there. That Monday, I called an all-hands meeting. No script, no slides, just me. "Some of you know me," I began. "Some know only what you've been told. I'm here to restore trust." A few heads lifted. "I was fired last week, told I wasn't what this company needed." I didn't argue. Because leadership isn't about volume, it's about values. I promoted Maya from support to lead client experience. Rehired Kevin in engineering. Fired managers who led through fear. I launched People First, a culture shift toward transparency and recognition. Change was slow, then it wasn't. One afternoon, I spotted a whiteboard note. She came back. Not she won. She came back. A year later, I stood at the glass doors as CEO. Suit crisp, peaceful. The company was thriving. Strongest quarter in 5 years, retention soaring. I kept Dad's photo behind my desk. A quiet promise fulfilled. "We did it," I whispered, watching city lights blink through the glass. This wasn't just victory. It was home. If this story moved you, tap that like button, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more. Quiet strength always finds its way.